Lots to talk about in relation to this, but do you think that wokeism contains within it the seeds of its own destruction?
Absolutely. I think, as we have seen with wokeism, it is very harmful to society. When they're constantly pushing something more and more extreme, it is causing people to rail against the wokeism and fight back. So when we see examples like Sam Smith's new music video, which for me personally is very vulgar, there's a lot of sexual references there, it's just going too far. When we see things like that, it only seeks to kind of cause division. As we've seen in Canada, this, like you were saying, this theatre that's now banning white people from attending a show, that just creates hate, it just creates division. So we need to stop with this wokeism, we need to fight back against it, and we just need to bring common sense back into the world.
Yes, I mean, is stopping people of a certain skin colour attending an event not racism itself?
It's absolutely racist, and as we saw last week in the US with the tragic killing by the cops of this innocent man that was killed just for a traffic stop, you know, we saw that, and the officers that killed him happened to be black. But there's a lot of media in America blaming white people, blaming white supremacy for this attack, and that's simply not the case. This was a group of officers that were very bad and very evil what they did, but we can't use that as an example of racism or, you know, try to criticise everyone.
You could tell that the liberal media in America were almost disappointed that it wasn't white cops involved, because it didn't allow them to do you know, the usual narrative that America is riven with racism. Clearly there is racism, but it does seem to be an agenda in some political quarters.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, every time there seems to be a mass shooting, which is very tragic in America, we saw the Colorado shooting last year, immediately the mainstream media decided to blame a right-wing extremist, but it actually turned out the killer was actually non-binary and they were a member of the LGBT community. So, you know, having that kind of rhetoric and jumping to conclusions is harmful. The media have a responsibility to bring people together and to stop this division and try to get to the root cause of these issues and, you know, make society better, not kind of blame different people and cause division.
As I mentioned in the monologue, there is a counter-argument that what they're doing in Canada is trying to foster a secure, safe environment for people of colour to appreciate the story of racism. The LSE want to be inclusive by getting rid of the words Lent and Easter. And, of course, the Scots, the SNP, Nicola Sturgeon, she wants trans people to feel accepted and safe in Scotland, although it would appear that her policy is unravelling.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very important to recognise the rights of trans people, and they are a vulnerable group in society, so we do need to love and support them. But the issue with what's going on in Scotland is it's putting women at risk, as we saw last week with this male rapist who transitioned after committing his crimes. He was in an all-female prison for 3 weeks. And guess what? He didn't even have a gender recognition certificate, which is what Scotland is pushing, you know, you can legally change your gender. He simply identified as a woman, put on a wig, and, you know, the prison service went along with it and put him in a prison. Imagine that, putting a rapist, a criminal, in a prison with women. You know, he's only going to commit the crime again, and that's putting the rights of a rapist above the rights of women. It's outrageous.
There's a fudge now from Sturgeon. She said no one that has a history of violence towards women should be in a women's jail, even if they are a trans woman. I don't think anyone that's a biological male should be in a female prison. If I go and do shoplifting at my local Ryman, which of course I never would, even though their pens are very, very tempting, but if I was shoplifting and I got arrested and got imprisoned, I've got no right to be in a female prison either. And I pose, hopefully, no threat to women, but I don't think anyone with a male biology should be in a female prison.
Absolutely. It's just not fair to put women at risk. And, you know, this was one example, but Scotland actually has more male transgender prisoners in women's prisons than the UK entirely. So there is a risk. And there was another case of a man who became trans. He was a murderer, became trans, and now identifies as a baby. And the prison guards are actually providing him with nappies and dummies. I mean, that's just wokeism to the extreme. And this is a murderer, you know, and they're putting his rights above women.
Absolute shocker. A quick word on Richard Madeley, the host of GMB on ITV, in trouble this morning for misgendering Sam Smith. So Sam Smith identifies as, what would you call it?
Non-binary.
Non-binary, and therefore we refer to Sam Smith as they, them. Do you think that it was wrong of him to call Sam Smith he? And should he have apologised? You
know, it's a really kind of silly thing, because these pronouns can be so confusing for most people. And if you don't get the right pronoun, suddenly there's outrage. I mean, come on, they, them is a plural. you know, it's meant to be more than one person. So it's very confusing for most people. So Richard, you know, was just using common sense. Sam Smith is a man. I think he likes to use the gender fluidity and outrage for views and for attention and stuff. But, you know, I defend Richard Madeley. You know, he wanted, you know, he is a man. Sam Smith is a man. He didn't want to, you know, misgender him on purpose. But how can you help it?
But if you say Sam Smith is a man, is that not offensive to Sam Smith, who is non-binary and doesn't consider themselves to be a man?
I mean, it's just the fact, you know, it's biology. Sam Smith was born a man. He might identify in a different way, but, you know, he's still a man at the end of the day. I'm not being offensive in any way. I respect Sam Smith for identifying his own way, but I'm just speaking about biological facts.
Would you say that actually the solution with the pronouns is that it's either he, him or she, her? Is that so? Let's say someone's called Bob and they want to be Sandra, then it becomes he, him, and then she, her.
Yeah.
Do you think they is a step too far?
I think so, yes. I mean, I support people being trans. You know, some people generally feel they are born in the wrong body. I completely support that, and, you know, I would refer to them as a she. But I think the they, them thing is just kind of silly, and I think the non-binary thing kind of symbolises wokeness. It's a little bit of a step too far, and it's pushing people away from the LGBT community. They're seeing the LGBT community as more extreme now, based on people like Sam Smith. So I think it's harmful in the long run.
When does this woke stuff end? Can you give me a date?
I can't give you an exact date.
2027?
But we need to keep fighting against the wokeism. Hopefully we can
Will it
defeat
burn itself out, like sort of PC in the 80s?
I think so. I mean, like with Scotland, people are absolutely outraged of a male rapist in a women's prison. That is wokeism that's gone too far, and people are fighting back. The majority of people are against wokeism. I think we're going to see the end of wokeism soon, hopefully this year.